Okay, great. Well, thanks everyone for joining us today. We have folks joining remotely. So I would prefer to do introductions of everyone, but probably impractical with folks joining remotely. But please feel free to, when you speak, identify yourself, your business, when you're asking a question or engaging with us. That just helps us get a feel for the landscape of the employer community and the questions coming in. I'm Cher Hobbins. I'm the Deputy Executive Director for the Department of Labor and Employment. And we have our whole team here today. So we're just going to go around the room and do quick introductions this way. So Jessica.
Hello, everyone. I'm Jessica Smith. I am the Communications Manager for the Family Division. Nice to meet you all.
Hi there, I'm Tracy Marshall, and I'm serving as the Division Director for the Family. My name is Lydia Welliver, I'm the Policy Manager.
Oscar. So thanks again for joining us either in person or online. Just a few housekeeping items, mostly for our friends joining virtually. Please go ahead and raise your hand when you'd like to ask a question. We have disabled the chat function. Everything we're given today, even the folks in the room, the hard copies, we will share out electronically. Likewise with the folks who are joining us remotely. We'll go through our presentation, certainly ask questions as you think of them, jot them down, but we have a lot of time set at the end to get to your questions. Yesterday, as an example of our outreach, the division staff, we presented at 3 different opportunities to employer groups. So our goal really is to have as much outreach and engagement with employers as possible in person, virtually, because we know this is a brand new program. It's a brand new mandate placed upon employers, and we want to make sure you have access to us to ask your questions. Our slides get into this, but just so you know in advance, there are really 2 big milestones we're working on. One is getting our employers into the new premium system that's being built now. And the goal is to have employers begin registering in that system in the fall of this year. As I said, it's a brand new technology build. It is not yet ready for user access. And we will certainly be sending out broad communications when it's ready. So what you will need to do is set up an account. And again, we'll go into this later, but we'll walk you through the steps of that. We have some opportunities to provide you some technical support through that process. So that system will allow us to begin collecting premiums and allow you to file wage reports starting in January of next year. The second milestone we're working toward, which you'll see in the presentation, is the payment of benefits, which will start in January 1, 2024. So while we're building the technology system, we're getting you into the premium system. At the same time, we'll start working on the benefit system that will deploy next year to pay benefits a year out. So we'll walk through all of these mechanics in our presentation. A quick thank you to Employment Services of Weld County and Tammy Grant and the staff, Elvira and Andrew and all the folks here. We have some locally purchased cookies from Eileen's Bakery. We want to support our local employers. So with that, let's just go ahead and get started. So a quick agenda today. So we'll go into what is family, the timeline, what you can start doing now to prepare for family, when employees can use family leave, big question we're getting in from our employer community, the benefits to small businesses, funding, premiums, private plans, rulemaking, local governments, and of course questions. A lot of content, and hope to most importantly leave time for your questions. Okay, so what is family? So I think at present we are one of 11 states with a paid family leave program in the country. This was passed by Colorado voters. It's a voter-approved ballot initiative which mandates that the department implement a paid family leave program. It provides leave for workers to take care of themselves or a loved one. It covers most workers in Colorado, including self-employed and gig workers. Those workers do have the opportunity to participate into the program, paying a portion of the premiums. It also is contributed by both the employee and the employer, and how that's calculated, and we'll get into this, is 0.9% of the employee's wages. So the employer contributes 0.45 and the worker contributes 0.45 as well. We do have a premiums calculator on our website at family.colorado.gov. You can plug in either a weekly salary or an annual salary, and it can tell you what the contribution is. So quick math, if you are earning $50,000 a year, the contribution from both the employee and the employer is around $4.06 a week. But we'll get into some of the premium calculations here as well. So next, we just have some timelines laid out for you. As I said, those two big milestones are at the top, but right now we are in the middle of rulemaking. And so with a focus presently on the benefits rules, there is an opportunity for you to weigh in at our public hearing for the benefits rules. This will happen on August 6th. We'll be sharing this information out in the presentation as well. So really a focus on rules. We are building this program from the ground up. We are leaning on other states who have paid family leave programs, looking at their rulemaking processes, their best practices, and everything from premiums and local governments to benefits and how other benefit types like FML will interact with paid family. As you can see here, this is our public education campaign, really trying to get in front of and engage with as many employers as possible. Again, that January 2023 date is when payroll deductions will begin. The first quarter, if you're familiar with our unemployment insurance division, we really did try to model this program as closely to UI as we could, such that that is a quarterly program. So you're paying into the fund quarterly, you're filing your wage reports quarterly. And so wherever we could duplicate those processes, we certainly tried to do so. So premiums due if you participate in the state plan, and the if is something we'll get into a little bit later in terms of options available to you. So if you participate in the state plan, your premiums, just like UI, will be due the next quarter for the preceding quarter. We will have a 30-day grace period for that initial reporting period. And then again, benefit payments begin in January of 2024. As we've been communicating with employer groups, one of the questions is, how will you let the workforce know that, yes, they're contributing to a program a year before they will start taking a benefit? And we recognize that will be a challenge for employers to communicate. So within our employer toolkit, we will build out as many resources for you to share with your workforce as possible so that they know this is a state mandate, this is a required program. You have some options in participating, but if you do participate, there is a required payroll deduction. And it's important for workers to know that, because they may say, well, I didn't vote for this, I didn't approve this, and we really want you to be able to respond with, yes, and here's the benefit, or yes, and here's the backstory. And so kind of things we've already talked about, and here are just 6 quick steps for you to begin preparing your business for families. So, and we'll, again, my colleagues will get into this. Determine how the program will impact your organization, and it is based on head count, so we'll get into that. Estimate your premium liability using the premium calculator on the website. Consider your options. So when I said if you participate, this means you can be a participant in the program, have a private plan that meets or exceeds the state program, and if you're a local government, you can opt out. So we'll get into some of the specifics of that. It's not too soon to start preparing your HR folks, if you have them, or if you are those folks, on what you need to implement a payroll deduction, and then engage your payroll group, and then send us your questions, participate in the rulemaking public comment period. Every day we are hearing new questions from employers that we haven't heard yet, and that's really informing all of the policies, administrative guidance for the program as we go forward. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to my colleague, Tracy Marshall.
All right, thanks, Cher. So here we're going to take a look at who the covered workers are, who can take and utilize paid family leave. So to take us into January of 2024, so family is going to be providing up to 12 weeks of paid family leave for covered employees. There are going to be circumstances where somebody may be able to take up to 16 weeks, and that's if there are complications related to the birth of a child. Okay, very, very specific to childbirth. Covered workers will be able to apply for benefits to take care of things like a ongoing chronic medical condition, to take care of a family member who has a serious health condition. They may need the leave to take care of a child, whether that child's been given to them through foster, adoption, or through childbirth. The leave would still apply for all of those circumstances. The leave will also be there for people who are being deployed within the military. So we do have leave available for their family members to adjust as they are going out onto military deployment or if they're returning home. The leave also provides time for people who've been impacted by domestic violence, intimate violence, sexual assault. This is called our safe leave, and we do want to make sure that we're giving appropriate care to people that are going through those situations as well. The program, as Cher said, will cover almost all workers in the state of Colorado. That includes people who are self-employed and those who are gig workers. So how does family benefit our small businesses? You know, with today's labor market the way it is, we're all competing for the same talent pool. And right now, workers really are expecting to have benefits. Paid family leave is kind of becoming that floor of benefits that employees are expecting to be offered. The way that the state program can help small businesses is by offering this program to you at a reasonable cost and with all the logistics pretty much taken care of for you. What you will need to do is just upload your wage reports, submit the fee payments over to the state, and then anybody who needs to take leave will apply directly to the state of Colorado. We will do the adjudication on that leave. We will take care of making sure the employee receives payment, and we will notify you when you can expect to see your employee returning to work. Research has shown to us that employees that have access to paid family leave are more likely to remain in the workforce, and that includes our moms that are returning to work after pregnancy and childbirth. So it's much more likely that you will retain those employees if they are able to utilize paid family leave. What we've also heard from research in the state of California is that about 90% of employers that were surveyed 10 years after their program went into effect told us that it had a positive or a neutral impact on their employee morale and productivity. So it's definitely something we've seen a positive impact from. So moving on to how family is funded. As was mentioned earlier, FAMLI's a voter-approved initiative. This came down in the 2020 ballots, and it's funded by both employers and employees. So employers that have 9 or fewer employees will be remitting to the state the 0.45%, which is their employees' participation and contribution to the program. Those employers that have 10 or greater employees will be sending in 0.45% on behalf of their employees, plus the employer contribution that matches that of an additional 0.45%. And that gives us a total of 0.9% per employee for employers with 10 or more employees. It is an option for employers if they wish to do so to cover that 0.45%, either in part or in whole for their employees as an additional perk of their benefits package. Not a requirement, but certainly something you're welcome to do if you wish. As far as whether or not the family premiums are subject to change, right now, the way that the ballot was written, the fee will be 0.9% through the end of 2024. Once we get into 2025, we will be reviewing whether or not the rate stays the same based on the health of the program and the health of the fund. Per the statute, the highest it would ever go is 1.2%. What we've seen happen in some of the other states that have gone before us is that they have been able to decrease the amount of the premiums and increase the amount of benefits that participants are receiving. So we're optimistic that we would see the same, but we'll see how it plays out over the next couple of years. Lydia, I will hand over to you.
Thank you, Tracy.
I know you want to talk about this, but
And Lydia, if you can try to speak loudly.
Oh, yes, ma'am.
for
Hi,
our-
everybody. I don't have a problem being loud, so I will try to accommodate that. My name is Lydia, and I'm one of the policy managers for FAMLI. And so I'm going to share with you a little bit of the logistics of how this is going to work. And so first off, as it was mentioned, we tried to make this as easy and as painless as we could for employers. And so for those of you that are used to calculating wages under unemployment insurance, you're going to use the same wages for FAMLI. That's going to serve as the basis for our premiums for this as well. There are a lot of considerations in terms of which payments are considered wages. You can find more information about this in our rules, and we also have a link to the PowerPoint and then our website, which is that handy dandy table that, again, if you're used to using UI, you've probably seen that before. Okay. So as was mentioned, calculating employers, number of employees comes down to the head count of how many people you are employing. And so we have devised a way to do this in our rulemaking that really leans on what has been found in the FMLA as well. And so when you're counting your employees, you're going to calculate once a year. And once a year, you're going to be counting the number of employees that have been on your payroll for 20 or more calendar weeks in the preceding calendar year. So in 2023, as an example, employers that report having more than 10 employees who have worked more than 20 weeks in all of 2022, that employer will be required to pay the employer share of the premium for all 4 quarters in 2023. And employees that are on leave, including sick leave, medical leave, a leave of absence, disciplinary suspension, should all be counted as the employer if you expect them to return. So if you have somebody go out on leave, they're still your employee, they're still with you, you need to include them in your account. And that's how we're going to do that once a year. Yeah. So now let's talk a little bit about how FAMLI is going to look for your employees once it's up and running in 2024. So this is proportional to the average local wage for Colorado, and it may increase over time. You can see there's a few ranges of what premium deductions and benefit payments will look like based on the employee's wages. When you're taking an eligible family leave, employees will receive up to 90% of their wages based on a sliding scale, and benefits are capped at $1,100 per week. We have both the benefit amount calculator as well as the premium calculator on our website. And so you can get a really good estimation of what that's going to look like for your individual circumstance. And then the wages are paid up to that federal Social Security cap. And so that cap is not set in stone, that fluctuates year to year. We usually see those set in October. And so we will put out communications when that changes. All right. So quick note about private plans and self-insurance. And so Cher alluded to this earlier in terms of employers having options to go with a state plan or a private plan. And so we are still currently drafting the rules on private plans. And so we don't have huge amounts of details for you, but what we do know is that the benefits under private plans need to match or exceed the benefits found under the state plan. And so in order for a qualifying plan to be accepted for the exemption, it's going to have to include at least this. It's going to have to be at least the same number of weeks of benefits. It's going to be the same level of wage replacement for each week of benefits with no additional conditions or requirements. And you can't deduct anything more than the deduction you would find for the state plan. So that's also have to be the same because, again, it's a fully equivalent plan. The private plans are also going to be required to cover each employee throughout the duration of their employment with your business, and there'll be some additional pieces in terms of guidance and remaining compliant with that to make sure that it is, again, an equivalent plan. We also know that several insurance companies also are interested in Colorado and providing this benefit, and they offer these benefits for similar employers and similar plans across states. So for self-insurance, we'll also have that as an option. And for those policies, we are going to require a surety bond. We can more about that when the rules come out on how to get that done. And so we are having a hearing soon. It's actually August 2nd at 5 p.m. And this is going to be a rulemaking process, rulemaking hearing on the benefits rules. And so those are posted on our website, and we have those up the link for that up there for you. And so take a look at those. You can look at all of our proposed and adopted rules on our website. And for each of our hearings, we encourage everyone to submit public comments. And those can be written to us anytime before the hearing. You can show up to the hearing and provide comments there virtually, or submit comments up until August 5th for this particular set of rules. Oh, thank you. Oh, I got that you're not speaking loud enough. Thank you. So again, that's going to be your best place to find all of the rules, including the rules on private plans when they're published, but benefits are up for your review. So please take a look. And anything we get is submitted to us in writing has the same veracity as if you had shown up and participated in the public hearing. So all comments count, and we're able to post those comments publicly on our website, and so you can see what your peers are also saying about the program. Okay, so local governments, we're going to switch gears just real quick, have a few more options when it comes to participating in family, and that was granted to us by our statute. So they're a little different from public employers. And next slide. Thank you. Okay. So if you are a local government, you have some options. We have 3 that we've identified for you. So your first option is to say, I am all in. I am going to do family. And you get to do all of the things that a normal employer would do in terms of you would ask your employee to pay their share of the premium, and you also say, as an employer, I'm going to pay my part of the premium. And so if you are participating in family as a local government, you would pay 0.45% of the wages if you have 10 or more employees, and then 0% of the wages if you have 9 or fewer employees. And so it's the same deal that all the employers get across Colorado. And then you would remit your employees and your employer share to the state once a quarter. Okay. If I am taking door number 2 and I say, you know what, I'm not going to pay the employee share, the employer share of family, but I want to make sure my folks have access to benefits, you can say, I'm going to decline family, but I'm going to help facilitate this for my employees. And so that looks like notifying us of your decision with the declination vote, but then also saying that you are going to submit wage data to us, and you're going to submit your employees' share of the premium. And so you become helpful in that to make sure that your employees have coverage. And so we also, with the declination vote, wrote in the rules that declination vote is good for 8 years at a time. And so every 8 years we check in on you and say, is this still working for you? And do you want to make a different choice for that? You get to renew that vote depending on what your workforce looks like at that time. And then the final option is to just decline participation. And so you would say, you would give us the opt-out vote, give us a documentation, and say, no, thank you. And we would keep that, and that would again be good for those 8 years. And I turn it back to Tracy now. Thank you.
Thanks, Lydia. So we've got a couple of scenarios here, so you can put this more into real life terms of what it actually looks like for your workforce. So here we have Mateo. Mateo is working for a company. He works for a small business that has a total of 8 employees. Each biweekly pay period, he earns wages that total $1,200. Beginning on January 1st of 2023, Mateo's employer will start deducting 0.45% of his wages from his paycheck to contribute to the family premiums. That works out to be $5.40. Because Mateo's employer has 9 or fewer employees, his employer is not required to pay the employer premium. So if it wishes to, it can choose to pay any or a portion of the premium for Mateo on his behalf, again, as that perk that we had mentioned earlier. If we continue to look at the story through the lens of Mateo's employer, let's just say that all 8 employees of this company earn around the same amount of wages. What that will look like is that there are 6 biweekly pay periods in the quarter. Mateo's employer would deduct and then remit a total premium of $32.40 for each employee. And that would mean a total remittance to the state of Colorado of $259.20 for that employee workforce for the quarter. Now, hand back to Cher to wrap up.
Thanks, Tracy. So we are almost to our Q&A portion, but before we move to that segment, just some links for you to some digital online resources that we've developed. We started with an employer toolkit, which we continue to add to on a regular basis. In the works right now are some video content, an employer guide. We have a local government guide, break room posters. Part of FAMLI does require, as with workers' comp, a break room poster, and we will be putting that online and sharing that out as a digital resource for download as well. And we mentioned the premium benefits calculator, and also a link to all of our previous content that we actually started this outreach in December of last year with our very first webinar. We have 2 pre-recorded webinars the first 2 months of the quarter. The 3rd month is live, our last live webinar on premium calculations. We had over 500 participants. We also have a monthly newsletter where we share out all of this content. You can sign up to receive that on our website at famli.colorado.gov as well. And then lastly, we are on social media, so you can follow us on our social media channels, on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and this slide also includes how to contact us. So we have an email box, and we look forward to hearing from you. And let's just get right into the questions. So how we'll do this is we'll kind of toggle back and forth between our folks in the room and anything submitted online. And then Jessica, if you could read the question, both that's being asked in the room and the one online, to make sure we're communicating to our 2 audiences.
Sure. Do we want to start in the room? Do we have any questions here in Greeley?
I have a question. If I decide to pay the full premium for all of my employees, they are growing company, it get too expensive, will I be able to go back for the employees to do the portion and I do the other portion?
And before we answer, let's have Jessica just repeat the question.
Great question. For our online audience, the question is, as an employer, if she decides to cover the employee premium to start, can she change her mind and go back and just cover the employees section and not cover, or excuse me, the employer section and not cover the employee if costs get too high?
I can take that. So, oh, thank you. Oh,
Tight.
okay. Thank you. A little logistical. This is a little bit in place. Thank you. So that depends on the size of your employee count. And so if you are, if you grow and you hit 10 or more employees, then you're paying both the employer share and the employee share. So if you stay below 9, if you are a company of 3 or 4, you're 9. Got it.
I'll pay the whole thing.
Got
But
it.
then we are growing. I
Perfect.
don't know how fast this will come in the future, but it may happen. So I just want to know if I have that option.
Great. Thank you. And so just to repeat the comment made in the room, this is a great question from an employer who has 9 employees now, who may grow to be 10 employees
I have more than that.
the
I
future.
have like 27.
Oh, she has 27 employees. Okay, got it. So if you have 27 employees, you are over 10. And so you are required to pay the 0.9% of that. And so you can always change in your own policies and procedures, you know, what share of how the additional 0.45% that you would be paying for your employees. So as an employer of 10 or more, you would always be remitting the 0.9. But if you are being more generous, you can change that, because that's an internal policy special to you.
Okay, I'm going to switch to an online question. We've got 2 questions in related to employees in Colorado in terms of counting your total employee headcount. When counting your number of employees, do you count only the employees working in Colorado, or do you count anyone who works for you regardless of their work location? And that addresses both Sarah and Mary's question in the Q&A function. Tracy is going to address this. We're just playing hot potato with a mic.
Can you still hear me? I feel like I hit a button. Okay, we're good. So yes, you would count all of your employees regardless of their location. So if you have 50 employees in Wyoming and 5 in Colorado, your employee count is going to be 55. And then you will be remitting the employer and the employee portion of the payment for those 5 people in the state of Colorado. But when we count up your total head count to determine whether or not you have 9 or fewer, we will look at your entire workforce population.
Does that mean that the employees that we have in Phoenix will also get the same benefit, or we're just paying for them without them?
Great question. For our online audience, the question is, if we have employees in another state, do they also get the benefit, or are we just paying for them?
So you don't actually pay for the folks that are living out of state. So for your example, in Arizona, your folks that live and work in Arizona, you won't have to pay anything for them to the state of Colorado, but we will include them in that head count when we're determining the size of you as an employer. So only your employees within the state of Colorado that are eligible for those benefits will receive them. Your out-of-state folks are just for us to assess your total employer headcount size. Did that help clarify for you?
We have another question here in the room. Go ahead.
So the benefit for the employees, is that annually that they have the 12 weeks, or is that a lifetime benefit that they have?
The question is the benefit annual or is it for a lifetime? 12 weeks across a year span or across a lifetime?
You can think of it similar to FMLA, that 12-month look back rolling calendar. So if you use the first, if you use 12 weeks in the first quarter of 2024, you're not going to be eligible for any more time until you get into the first quarter of 2025. That answer your question?
What about if it's the end of the year?
So just think of it as a looking back calendar, right? So if I used leave in, I don't know, November to December of 2024, right? I would not be eligible for leave again until November to December of 2025. So really just think of it as taking your calendar, look back 12 months. People will start to reaccumulate that on a rolling calendar basis, just like they do FMLA currently.
My question is, we're under 50 employees, so we don't offer FMLA. So we're not real familiar. I'm familiar, but I'm not integrated. But how does that coordinate then? With work, say employers do have over 50, what's going to, will this take the place of FMLA?
So the question is for employers who have under 50 employees, so they don't qualify for FMLA, how does the family benefit coordinate with FMLA if you did have 50 plus and for those who don't have access to FMLA?
Well, these are great questions. So if you have under 50 employees and you're not currently familiar with FMLA, the main thing I can tell you is that FMLA is job protected leave. You have to have worked for an employer for a certain amount of time, 1,250 hours, and you also have to work for an employer that is of a certain size, as you're well aware, right? So it's an unpaid job protection only leave. The difference with the paid family leave is it does have that pay component to it. The idea is it will replace a partial amount of your employee's paycheck. For those employers that have greater than 50 employees, what you'll find is that the 2 leaves, for the most part, will run concurrently. So you will burn down your FMLA at about the same time that you are burning down your family leave. Okay, it's not always going to be a perfect match, But the way that the family program was written for the ballot, the idea was that they would run simultaneously or concurrently.
We'll take a couple questions from our online audience. Kim is asking, are premium deductions pre-tax?
Hi, Kim. So the taxation question is one that is a little bit unsettled in terms of how the IRS will treat paid family medical leave programs. And so we encourage you to reach out to your tax professionals and to the Department of Revenue with for the tax questions, but we can say that this is the same wage base as what you currently use for UI.
We have another question in the room. Go ahead.
This is about where and file and pay. Is it going to be a separate website the way you have it, or is it going to go through revenue online? There, or will it be another online?
Great question. The question is, how will employers file their wage reports and pay their premium payments? Is it a separate portal from UI? Is it separate from the Department of Revenue? How will that work?
It's a great question. And so it will be through CDLE and through the FAMLI website. And so it will be a different portal, but we are working to make sure that it is as seamless as possible to work between the two. And so at the same time you log on to file your UI, you can click over and file FAMLI.
And just to clarify, it will be two separate systems, though. You'll be able to file the same reports, but it will be a separate filing from your, from your unemployment files. Okay, I'm going to take a question from our online audience. If someone has a death in the family, can they use this type of leave?
So family doesn't cover bereavement leave. That is something that would be separate and is an offered benefit by your employer. If you have a family member that has been dealing with a end of life health issue, it would certainly cover the time that you're with your family member before they pass, but it would not cover time after they are deceased.
Tammy Andrus, I see you had your hand raised in the chat. I'm going to unmute you now. Tammy, if you are unmuted, go ahead and ask your question. Tammy, we're unable to hear you if you are talking, so if you can type it out in the Q&A, we will get to it shortly. In the meantime, I will answer Dixie's question. You may have answered this already, but does this apply no matter the part-time or full-time status?
That's a great question. So yes, both part-time and full-time workers are eligible for family.
We have another couple questions in the room. Go ahead.
Like one of the slides I had mentioned that the premium rate would change. Would make that change? Is there a certain time of year that? At some point, if the premium were to be capped at 1.2, does it come back to the voter and increase that rate? General population?
Good question. For our online audience, the question is about when the premium rate will change and when that will be announced. And if it does reach the cap, how will it go back down and vice versa?
That's a great question. So again, these work with the Social Security wage cap. The feds usually make that announcement in September, October, and the fall of each year. And so we would look to that and make an announcement in the late fall to take effect January 1 of the next year. So hopefully give folks enough time to be able to program their systems and to be used to that change. In terms of the upper cap, that 1.2%, that cannot change unless there is a bill or another ballot measure, but the legislature can change that as well.
We have another hand raised.
I just want to know if you will be able to elaborate a little bit more on the military deployment. Did you mention for them coming back as well? I just have two military I have a military one and a military one.
The question is asking for clarification on military leave specifically.
That's a great question. And so family is largely going to cover military leave reasons for the same reason that FMLA would cover, right? Which covers that qualifying deployment. And so that is readiness. That is, I need to meet with an attorney and get my things in order before I go. There's also provisions in there that would allow you to take some time when somebody is returning to make sure that their healthcare is provided for, and they're all set with anything they might need support-wise due to their service. And so that would count for the military spouse being able to take time, as well as your military member,
Military mom.
military mom. Yes,
Military
your
mom.
mom would be taken care of. Yep.
Another question in the room, go ahead.
How does this work in conjunction with the current Colorado, I think it's the public health emergency? I think I heard maybe that's ending soon. Is that going to be replaced by?
Great question. The question is asking how family will work with the Healthy Family Workplaces Act, and I'm going to hand the mic over to Cher. Again, this is the law that allows public health emergency leave.
Sure. So great question. Currently, the executive order for Colorado is tied to the presidential's declaration of an emergency, which is set to expire around the end of the year, at which time the state's emergency order will expire around the same time. So that particular benefit tied to that leave program will have no intersection with paid family leave.
Can they take more?
As long as that order is in effect and it is still a public health emergency. Correct.
Okay, I'll take another question from our online audience. Tammy has got her question in. She's asking for clarification on if they have their own PTO balance, can they opt out of family?
So if you're offering something like an unlimited PTO bank, those kind of things, it would have to be very, very clear that your employees can utilize that time for their family needs, right? You wouldn't be able to require any additional paperwork. There wouldn't be any additional burden on your employees as to what they would need to provide for you. It's something that you would need to document essentially as a private plan that you are doing as a self-insured entity. There is an option built into the program that if you as an employer and your employees agree to it, that they may be able to top up their family benefit to make them whole. So let's say you have an employee that receives around 60% wage replacement through the family program, and you as an employer and they as an individual employee both agree that they want to top up to get to that 100% wage using their PTO or vacation time. That's something you are committed to do, but it's not something that you can require. You can't force your employees to burn down their PTO. But if they wish to take it as an option and you agree, that's available to you.
Oh, I'm so sorry. We have another question in the room. Go ahead.
When is the employee eligible for benefits? Do they have to work for a certain period of time before they can?
Great question. And the question is, when is the employee eligible for benefits?
So eligibility is not tied to hours worked or length of service with an employer. It's tied to earnings. You have to have earned $2,500 in the 5 preceding quarters within the state of Colorado. For the vast majority of employees, that happens relatively quickly, and so they would be eligible fairly fast.
Another question in the room. Go ahead.
And just tell you that I thought I heard something that if they work somewhere else, that that is something that the state of Colorado, correct? as an employer, we might not know what their wages were prior to joining us. And so that's something that they submit a claim or whatever, then you would have that information.
Yes, and for our online audience, the question is if the employee worked for another employer previously, the state would find out what their wages were and we would determine their benefit payments and if they were eligible for the leave.
But just to clarify further on that, that's kind of tied into what we call portability of benefits. That particular piece, we are writing additional information on, we're seeking expert guidance on, just to make sure that information that we eventually pass on to you is as accurate as it can be and follows the ballot the way it was intended to. So more to come on that, but it's something that we're trying to get additional information to you on.
We have another question in the room. Go ahead.
This may not be decided yet, but where should we direct employees to go in 2024 when the state's to file? We need to meet that.
Great question. Where should employers direct their employees to go to file and apply for a claim?
So by the time your employees are needing to file a claim, there will be a portal website. It's not built yet. So this right now is the time for you to be saying to us, we really need to see this particular feature, or I want to be a part of this. As an employer, these are the things that are going to be important to me when my employees are taking leave, such as that return to work date, right? When are they going to be coming back? What do you need to do? Do you have responsibilities? Those are the kind of things that we're going to be building into the system, and any of you that wish to participate in that process, we really would welcome feedback. We want it to be user-friendly, but we also want to make sure that you receive the information that you need to also run your business.
Can I just add to that? So the goal, just like we were mentioning, alignment with UI, the goal would be to have a landing page where you could manage your UI account if you do so online and your family account. Likewise, when filing a claim, ideally, a worker could apply for UI or file a family claim within one environment, so they're not navigating within one department 5 different landing pages. So we really do want to try and provide all benefits through one landing page and then employer services through another.
We have another question through Zoom. If an employee is employed by 2 companies in Colorado, which employer is responsible for covering the leave?
It really would depend on whether or not the individual needs to take leave from both companies or only one, right? So to use the example of I maybe work doing some accounting, paperwork stuff during the daytime, and then in the evenings, I work as frontline wait staff or bartending, that kind of thing. If I have an ankle injury, I may still be able to do my desk side computer work, but I may not be able to do the work that requires me to be on my feet in the evenings. So it really is going to depend on whether or not they need to take leave from one employer or from both.
Looks like we have a lull in questions on Zoom. Anyone in the room want to raise their hand?
What about with the raises? Do we have to adjust that retention immediately, or it could be to the following quarter? How will we be working with that?
The question is, how do employers manage pay raises? When do they adjust the quarterly wage reports when those changes happen?
So it would be within that quarter. So if you do your wages in the first quarter, then you would be reporting that to us first quarter.
For the first quarter, right? So it's
I'm just saying if I do it in between. Like I change it, I'm beginning to raise this last month of that quarter. We have to adjust it immediately, or just do it for the next?
You do it for the next one.
Go ahead.
this is kind of the future part that you guys are building for the action in 2024. You do start receiving claims. You have a totally separate department now that's going to support that. It's outside of unemployment, so that we get another whole department. Put together for just this.
The question is, will there be a separate department to manage family claims separate from UI?
Yes, there will be. So when we started this build, goodness, just over 12 months ago now, we started with just 2 or 3 of us on the team. We're up now closer to about 15. And by the time you're seeing people submitting requests to leave in 2024, our team size should be closer to the 300 mark. So there will be a team dedicated to this, and shameless plug, I'm hiring.
But all live within the Department of Labor and Employment. So we have 7 regulatory divisions now, which include family. We also, as you probably know, have workers' comp, wage and hour, labor law. And so again, family will now be our 2nd largest division in the department. Just to put it in perspective, unemployment insurance has between 700 and 800 employees, a long established regulatory program, but so similar to family that I think that's why the ballot prescribed that lives within the Department of Labor. And we're leaning on UI in addition to the other states that have paid family leave on, as I said, UI practices and protocols in building this system. But you're looking at the owner of all this fun right to my left here.
Thank you.
Any other questions in the room? Any questions on Zoom? Feel free to type them in.
No.
Okay,
Close
well,
us out.
I think we will give you back 5 minutes of your time. Thank you all for joining us today, and the great engagement was wonderful. Sherry, do you want to close us
No,
out?
I think that's great. Thank you all online and in person. Great to have you. Take care.